Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's engagement session on the Department of Early Education and Care's state plan. So my name is Tom Myers, and I'm joined by Eli Cole, and we're going to walk you through today's engagement session. I just wanted to note that today's session is being recorded. Before we get started, I just want to say that we are excited to present this to you today and get your feedback. But first, I just want to take a minute to acknowledge the changes that have taken place over the last 5 days and the feelings and reactions that those changes may invoke in each of you. We know that some people are elated that these changes have taken place, and we know others are anxious about what other changes mean for the safety of children in their program or the families in their own home. We know that everyone is probably feeling a mix and wide array of emotion. We want everyone to know that EEC is committed to supporting providers at all times, but especially right now as we move through these changes. We're doing everything we can to gather and disseminate information quickly and consistently. If you aren't already, please sign up for the Commissioner's Field inbox so that you can stay up to date with the information coming from EEC. And you could also reach out to the Commissioner's inbox, and I'll put that email address in the chat, so anyone that doesn't have it can now have it. All right, so I don't know, Eli, if you want to share your screen and get the PowerPoint up, we can get started. Okay, and so I just wanted to start by way of overview, just to give some folks an idea of what the state plan is. So for those of you that don't know, that Department of Early Education and Care is the lead agency for administering child care subsidies in the Commonwealth. So with that designation, we are required to comply with mandates under the Federal Child Care Development Block Grant, which is a federal law that has various requirements around subsidies and other licensing requirements. As part of the CCDBG block grant, there is about $5.3 billion of funding that goes into what we call the Child Care Development Fund, or CCDF, and that's where we get a majority of our federal funding. As part of the CCDF program, we do have to submit what they call a tri-annual state plan. So every 3 years, we essentially submit a plan that documents all of our programs, all of our compliance requirements to demonstrate that we are in compliance with the CCDBG mandate. So this is the state plan that we have put together, which includes a lot of information, a lot of different programs and regulations for which many of you have already participated in engagement sessions this prior spring. So this kind of wraps it all into one document that we will be submitting to the feds. With that being said, I'll pass it over to Eli, who will go through a couple engagement slides, and then we can get into the state plan content.
Perfect.
Pass it off to you, Eli.
Definitely. So we wanted to just share a little bit of the background on how we've engaged, not just in the CCDF plan, but the strategic direction for the agency overall, and the ways that all of these things kind of work together. And so from December to March, EEC has engaged on some of the key initiatives within its strategic plan. These are the same initiatives that you'll see reflected in the CCDF plan. And so all of the feedback and the thinking and the insights and the recommendations that came through in all of those sessions in that period actively fueled the planning that you will also see reflected in the CCDF plan. So we wanted to share a little bit of the reach and the approach to that engagement. So in terms of reach, we heard sort of inputs or responses from over 7,000 constituents in the Commonwealth. Those responses were provided live in many cases. So we had 21 engagement sessions that were live dialogues, sort of getting responses and reacting in real time, digging deeper on some of the questions the Commonwealth is facing as it thinks about early education and care. And then we also hosted 8 surveys. So folks that weren't able to attend a live session were able to weigh in that asynchronous format. All of those surveys and live engagement were offered in both English and Spanish. And for live engagement, we did make sure to have sessions both during work hours and in the evening, depending on folks' work schedules, and also had live Spanish interpretation in those sessions as well. So that's the approach that we took. One of the ways that we understand our success in reaching people is looking at the engagement portal website. That's where we host all of the information related to all of the initiatives that we'll hear about this evening and that are reflected in the plan and that are core part of the strategic action plan for the department. And what we saw is that over that period, we had almost 13,000 unique visitors, so different constituents who visited that website to find out more about the strategic plan, the initiatives, the direction, and to participate in surveys or register for live sessions. So we are really excited about the engagement that we have seen, not just in our strategic plan and the direction of the agency for the future, but also in what you'll hear about tonight and the plan that will be submitted to the federal government. So I wanted to just share, maybe I'll start with this page actually, the strategic action plan that we have been speaking about for the last year now is hopefully familiar to all of you, but it lays out four kind of segments of the ecosystem for early education and care. And all of us are here because we care about children, youth, and families, the sort of ultimate beneficiaries of the work that, that everyone in this ecosystem does. And the goals that the department set around children, youth, and families are that they're able to fulfill their full potential, both now and in the future. And in order to do that, the key levers to ensure full potential for children and their families are through educators and programs, the educators that work with children and youth every day, the programs that run the administration and the home-based settings and the residential and residential and placement programs, all of which are licensed by the Department of Early Education and Care. So everything in that ecosystem has to be sort of working in this ideal way in order to get to the end results that we had envisioned. So we need educators who are professionally prepared and well supported, have a pathway, have a sense of how to progress within the field. We need programs that are ready to employ them and to build their strengths and their experiences. And then underneath all of that, we need a system represented most clearly by the Department of Early Education and Care, but even that is a part of multiple systems that is oriented around constituents, ready to be transparent and accountable, and able to steward public dollars in the most efficient and effective manner possible. So this is the sort of big picture of our strategic plan for the next several years. And then when you look at how the CCDF plan fits with that, you can see that on the right-hand side are the areas that we engaged over the last several months across those four pillars: children and families, educators, programs, and system. And then this middle column are the CCDF plan components that were directly informed by that engagement. So this is just a little bit of a crosswalk to show you when we convened in March and talked about financing models, when we convened in February and talked about program quality, all of that fed into the CCDF plan sections on continuous quality improvement and grantee program integrity and accountability. So you can sort of see the direct thread as you go across. And then the last thing I'll share is just to frame up what Tom is going to go into in the next pages in more detail, which are the sort of core initiatives within the strategic plan. So we talked about the four pillars. These are the seven big big ideas, I guess, that are being enacted through the strategic plan implementation. And so for children and families, thinking about affordability for all families, but also especially for families for whom access may be limited or who may be subsidy eligible. Thinking about ensuring that children are on track to third grade success and understanding what that means across the birth to third grade continuum, working across agencies and systems to make sure that that's able to be accomplished and that community capacity is built in order to bring that to life. For educators, we wanted to really focus on recruiting and sustaining of high quality early childhood workforce and out of school time workforce, building a credentialing system that offers clarity and understanding and pathways for educators as they move through the field and through education and training, as well as experience, which is just another very important sort of training grounds, and making sure professional development is aligned to that. Within programs, first of all, thinking about sustainability, recovery, stabilization, and then looking for a backbone of quality. How do we think about a quality improvement, a continuous quality improvement mindset within programs? and move on from what may have formerly been a focus on point-in-time measurements towards this idea of a mindset that's kind of continuous and always growing. And then how do we tie program investments to that quality to make sure that there are high quality programs reaching students who need them the most, or children? And then comprehensive programs supports mental and behavioral health, supports all of the leadership development, business supports, all the things that programs may need in order to advance on that quality pathway. And then finally, for EEC as a system, a lot of operational improvements, looking at the technology, the people, and the regulations, and thinking how all of those can orient around the constituent or the end user, to make sure that we are, as an agency, orienting around a constituent rather than a constituent having to kind of navigate through a maze to get to where they need to go. So this is a brief overview of the strategic plan for those of you who haven't been to sessions on this before. We just wanted to make sure that there was some familiarity with the direction the agency is going as we start to talk about the CCDF plan in that context.
Great, thanks, Eli. So I will talk you through how some of the work in the CCDF state plan actually aligns with these 4 pillars. So we'll start with for children and families, and some of the content within the state plan and how it matches up with our strategic action plan. So with respect to children and families, we're really looking at achieving affordability and support for families. So where you'll see this highlighted in the state plan is really in sections 3 and 4, where we talk about some of the subsidy policies, where we talk about some of the parent fee chart work that we've done. So as you may recall, we've recently implemented a new parent fee chart where families don't owe any parent fees below the state federal poverty limit. So in any income over the federal poverty limit is what is going to be essentially used as a percentage of what their payment will be. So with this new parent fee chart, you'll find that in section 4 of the state plan. You'll also see a lot of subsidy policies that we implemented through the course of the last year related to COVID. Some of these more flexible policies where we allowed for 26-week provisional authorizations to support families, where we allowed for waiving of co-payments, so families didn't have to pay their co-payments over the last year where they might have lost their job. We also offered a lot of flexibilities around temporary changes for job loss or service need loss. And these are all reflected in our subsidy interim policies and will all be highlighted in this state plan. So if you want to go to the next slide. For educators, so when looking at the strategic alignment for educators, we do capture a number of supports currently in development. So one major piece is the development of a new credentialing framework. So we're working really closely with our Board of Early Education and Care, as well as the advisory board, as we work through developing a new robust, credentialing framework, as well as a redesign of our career pathways to really provide that professional roadmap for educators. Another big piece that we're looking at, or that we've actually implemented, is around background record check and kind of streamlining that process for educators. So making it a more equitable and efficient system, but also allowing for an appeal process for certain educators that might not have had an appeal process if they were denied a background record check in the past. We've implemented new procedures around that to allow for that process. So a lot of this information that you'll see related to educators, you'll find in section 6 of the state plan. Some of the background record check stuff you'll see towards the end of section 5. And just as a quick note, I did put the link for where the state plan is located in the chat. So if you want to take a look at that, you can certainly reference some of these points that I'm alluding to here. So that is for educators. Now, as far as the strategic alignment for programs, there are several areas within the state plan that we outline support and to increase quality for programs. One of the major pieces that we discuss here in the state plan is talking about the QRIS system and really the redesign process that we're looking at over the next year to really create stronger ties between both quality and licensing, and then also looking at plans towards a tiered funding system. So that's a major piece that you'll see throughout, probably mostly section 6 and section 7 of the state plan, talking about the work we're doing around the redesign process. We also highlight a couple of other initiatives, mainly around the professional development centers, as well as the early childhood support organizations. And as you may recall, these are the pilot programs that we introduced that really provide instructional leadership and coaching services to programs. So these are two big pieces that we highlight throughout the state plan of some of the work that we've implemented. We also speak a lot about the mental health supports that we provide to programs, mainly around the early childhood mental health grant and some of the supports within that. So if you take a look at sections 6 and section 7 of the state plan, you're going to find a lot of this information about some of the work around these main initiatives. So then lastly, we'll go into the strategic alignment around systems. So what we're looking at here, and again, this ties to the work that Eli spoke to earlier this spring about some of the regulatory revision and some of that. So we are looking at a wholesale regulatory overhaul of a lot of our licensing, our subsidy, our enforcement regulations. And this is kind of tied throughout the state plan that you'll see a lot of this information. Again, QRIS redesign, which I just alluded to as well, is something that we're looking at over the next year of redesigning a new quality system. So these are a lot of systems that are in development, and that will be kind of implemented over the course of the next, several months into the next year. And one thing I want to highlight, as Eli mentioned as well in her presentation, is that the state plan is a living document. So as things, as we submit this plan to the feds by June 30th, it's going to represent the current state of affairs. But as things change, as we go through a regulatory revision, as we have a redesign of our QRS system, as we implement all these new programs, we will be required to submit plan amendments. So we're basically updating this document to reflect the current state of affairs. So again, this is a kind of a living, breathing document that our state plan is, and we're going to be continuing to update that as things move along. One other piece I'll highlight on the systems as well is the market rate survey that you'll find in section 4 of the state plan. So essentially, as part of the state plan, we do conduct a market rate survey to assess the cost of childcare. So this is something that we're looking at using data collected during the strategic planning process to support this cost study, and we'll be rolling that out over the course of the fall. So that's something to look forward to as well. So again, this is sort of the kind of a connection from the 4 pillars of our strategic plan, kind of tying it into the content of the state plan. So that being said, I'll turn it over to Eli, who will go through some engagement and get some feedback from the group.
Perfect, thank you. I think our group is small enough that we can use the chat feature or just unmuting and sharing thoughts to get feedback on what you've heard tonight. And so I'm going to enter just a couple of questions into the chat and ask for your help in engaging whether we're providing the right information and anything else that you might want to share. So the first question is, where do you see yourself and your work reflected in the plan? Does it feel relevant to you? Do you see things that feel like they apply to your work? And if you want to use private chat to just me, I can just read it out loud, or if you want to chat to everyone, that's fine too. I think we would also love to hear sort of a temperature check. Does this seem like we're headed in the right direction? Do you feel like you've gotten the information that you would want about the plan? Are there questions that you have coming out of that overview? Let us know what you think. Sure, it's been a long day for everybody, and that's okay. If you don't have feedback to share, that's fine too. I think we just want to make sure that we've answered any questions, that you've been able to highlight anything that you think is important for us to pay attention to, and that you feel like you've gotten what you wanted out of today's session. Thank you, Heidi. Glad to hear that it's a living document. Not a lot of surprises. Good. That's good. We don't want surprises. But there are things that are very much still in progress. Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, and I'll just add that we are allowing folks to submit written comment as well. So if you want to take a look at the state plan when clicking on the link that I shared in the chat and, take a look at it, review some of the information, you can send emails to the commissioner's inbox with a, subject line of state plan public comment, and we will accept written comment through the end of the week. So feel free to, if you don't have anything tonight to share, feel free to share it later on.
I do have private chat coming, so a couple of comments. One is thinking about the new quality directions, the idea that we're moving away from a quality rating improvement system that's sort of tied to benchmarks and point-in-time measurements towards this continuous quality improvement mindset, where it's more about being on a continuum towards quality, and making sure that there are ways to understand how degrees or years of experience in the field and those kinds of things fit in or tie to some of those quality measures. Diana, thank you. Hoping to understand how family childcare providers who may not necessarily be voucher providers fit into the upcoming plan. And then questions about when parents will begin to pay fees again, which may not be actually in the CCDF plan, I don't believe.
Yeah, so I can jump in there, Eli, as far as the family child care providers. So although it does speak to kind of federal funding, that we have to, dictate how we spend our federal dollars, it also relates to all of our license programs. So we do establish all of our licensing standards, and our regulations are all detailed in the state plan. So while there is a big focus on subsidized providers and outlining our subsidy system, we do outline all of our other requirements that apply to all licensed programs, not just subsidy providers. And then as for Maggie's question, I know that there's, questions about parent fees, and, that although that language specifically isn't in the state plan, when we're going to be, implementing that back in and having parents pay fees again. Right now, there is language in the budget that's pending with the governor's office about when we may end up implementing fees again, which right now could be, is towards the end of the year of this calendar year. But until we have a final budget, we won't know that for sure.
When that is determined, there will be a lot of communication around it, I'm sure. Are there any other thoughts or questions? I don't know.
There's a question about the payments for the children in schools, and I think Tom just answered that.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephanie.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, I don't see any other comments. We will hang out here for a moment in case something occurs to you and you want to stay behind to talk. Otherwise, we are happy to let you go to your families and your evenings and your plans and your dinners, with a lot of thanks for joining us tonight. And we will hope to speak with you soon at another engagement. Tom, did you want to close out?
Yes, so I just put the email address for the commissioner's inbox again in the chat feature. So again, we'll be accepting written comment for the rest of the week up until 5 o'clock on Friday. So if you don't have any questions or comments tonight, feel free to take a look at the state plan and feel free to write to us in the next couple of days. We'll certainly welcome that feedback and any questions. So
great.
I think we have.
I think there's Monica, it's important to know what that parents and children are a priority, since a lot of parents have lost their jobs. I appreciate that the EEC takes care of the educators' rights.
That's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Monica. Okay. All right. If we don't have any other questions or comments, so we can end it here. And again, feel free to, take a look at the state plan and feel free to send any additional feedback that you might have. We'd be happy to receive that. So thanks again for joining tonight. And we really appreciate you being here with us.